Hi, and welcome to another episode of Espresso Enlightened with Master Hung Trung. Thank you for joining us. In today's installment, I wanted to talk, we talked a little bit about evangelism, from a Western perspective and converting to my religion, because so much of when I grew up, it was my religion is right and everyone else's is incorrect. And I know other Western religions feel that way. How would a Buddhist from a Buddhist perspective, how would you define other religions and which one is correct and how I should look at it?
First of all, I would like to just give you 1 minute of how the Buddhist sutras address that. Buddhist sutra means Buddhist scripture. And at the very early time at the Buddhist scripture, they're always saying that it's a Buddha disciples and they are non-Buddhist. They are beyond this, the Tao, the Buddhist group. And it's very uneasy to see that it's two camps, this camp and the other camp. And so later in the Avatamsaka Sutra is talking more and more about how this non-Buddhist group become the Buddhist disciples themselves, how the different, these two are not much more than the capacity of heart. And so when you ask me how do I look at other religions, I think we all travel up to the one kind of point. Father Theodore Chakdin would say that it's the omega point when everything coming back to same place. So I believe very much each have different approach because of cultures. We have so many cultures in the world, and some cultures people are more comfortable to have a secure path. Some other cultures people don't need that much. For example, the Zen culture, the Chan culture, you rely on self-reliance, you practice upon you. And therefore, approach is different, but the destination is just one. And therefore, when you mention the word evangelism, I'm thinking of that capacity of each of us. Sometimes we need to be urging on, sometimes we can practice on our own. And therefore, it's not one path or many paths, but it actually, what kind of characters we have, what kind of need that we have. And because of what we need, religions happen to provide and help us to feel secure with that need. Is that what you experience?
It is, I guess, and if I'm hearing you, you're saying that the journey can begin in many different places.
In many. Destination can be the
same. And so, though, what I see from, and not putting a judgment on it one way or the other, but we'll see, say, evangelists knocking on doors on a Saturday saying, join my religion.
I see.
I haven't seen that in our experience together. Mm-hmm. Is that, from your perspective, how do you begin the process of, say, becoming a Buddhist?
You haven't seen me knock on your door because I couldn't find Google your house yet. Okay. It's really the interesting question about the relationship between student and teacher. We say the guide, the tour guide, the guide, and the followers are the people who are travelers who same path. And so there is such a thing that the relationship, and I believe that is not about right or wrong, but about the kind of somebody else. Sometimes I need to get people knock on my head and tell them, "Hey, Master, do this." Sometimes you have a big company and you know that you have to tell your employee, "Hey, do this." But sometimes we don't need to say anything. People are mature enough to take care of themselves, and therefore there's many ways of dealing with things. But as long as it works, as long as it's functional. So I don't say right or wrong, but I say that maybe different cultures. In America, many of us become very, very mature socially and intellectually, especially we understand emotional intelligence is a very big part of life. And therefore, maybe you don't need people to knock on your door. But there are places where you need to get people to understand and evolve. And so it's really something that we need to look from inside, not just make the blanket statement of what's good and what's not good. In Buddhist practice is a very interesting practice because I cannot force anyone to follow me. I cannot knock on the door. I cannot tell people to do whatever I do. And I knew that for a fact that I'm not perfect either. I make mistakes. I say wrong thing all the time. And so I cannot just shamelessly tell people that, hey, follow me, doing this. And I cannot stand behind the Buddha and say that, hey, the Buddha says that you got to follow. I cannot say that because I knew that my student can see through very quickly. All I do is that I say, all right, I make mistake. I do things wrong. But here I'm trying. And if you think the teaching, you think the path is good, then go ahead and just practice. And here the practice, go ahead, do it. But I wouldn't force them because I know it doesn't work. But I wouldn't say that forcing is a bad thing because a lot of time, for example, your son, you got to force him, hey, get up, you do meditation now. Hey, get up, go to work now. You have to tell him because sometimes your son has not get to the level of maturity to take care of his own life.
So much,
Sense?
it totally makes sense. So much of but our interaction through the years has been me coming to you and you waiting until I'm ready.
Yeah, right.
And so
The readiness.
The
yes.
readiness. And
Yeah.
can you talk about how a person would discover their readiness? Because for me, it was somebody, it was maybe somebody was knocking on my internal door saying,
Right.
you need to seek out somebody to help you understand things.
Exactly. You are talking about the most important thing in the whole universe, and that the moment that you are mature. Good friends, good teachers know that moment because interaction. And therefore, they would create the conditions so you can accelerate yourself towards that moment. Or sometimes they knock on your head and you wake up, satori, you wake up because you realize that, oh wow, that's what I'm looking for. So each of us always had the moment that we be transformed internally. And therefore, as a Buddhist, I really treasure that moment, so I nurture the conditions so people can wake up on that. So the emphasis, maybe you can start to see that some teachers, some religions, they probably emphasize more on different aspects of the path. But the Buddhists is emphasize more on that very moment. So for example, I give you a very solid example. Kevin. He came, he study, he practice, but he come to understand what I'm doing, what I'm saying. So I would nurture him. I wouldn't tell him, hey, this is the right way, this is the right way. But I didn't play so psychological game. I say, oh, you're good, do this. No. But I nurture his goodness. From goodness, he will come to the moment, the very moment that he said, oh yeah, I realize this is what I am. So the key difference between evangelism and probably Buddhism is we nurture that moment so people can open up themselves. They enlighten themselves. They see themselves growing and they become mature. I don't have what it takes to explain to you about evangelism, but I can see the difference, and that difference is we nurture that moment, the beautiful moment, and every one of us open up and become very, very deeply mature with the being, a sense of being.
So eventually everyone finds that moment, that they discover that search for more.
Yeah, and like a flower, you cannot force a flower to be open. You have to wait for it.
Will every human open up like that eventually, in your view?
Hopefully. That's a very big hope that all the Buddhists and Bodhisattvas, they all hope for that moment, because that's the really, really thing that why they in the world is to nurture so everyone can be open. And such a gentleness in the way that we like to do. So when I look at you, I look at Kevin, or I look at Nancy, or look at Dan, whoever. I don't look at you as a disciple or student or someone that I can extract money and want you to be following me, but rather we are trained to see that everyone is a lotus. So how is a lotus to be open? When and how? We become the gardener. We try to have all the conditions to help you to open up as a flower, as a lotus.
But to garden, somebody needs to invite you in to their garden. And so talk to me about that discovery. When and how does a person discover that they're ready to start to walk down that path you called the Omega?
Nobody really knows that and wanting, but our intuition always push us toward the direction to be ready. But we don't know that moment. That's the beauty of the path. We don't know it, but we intuitively want to go to there, right? And so you just ask, okay, how do I get invited to the garden and be the gardener, right? I still don't have any definitive answer, because that is what we call, in Buddhism, is affinity. The yuan, the affinity. It's not something you can manage it, you can control it. Your condition and affinity with someone has come by, and therefore you jump on it. But there's nothing we can control, and that the beauty of life is a lot of things we cannot control, and we don't attempt to control, but we just simply be aware of it.
You talked about intuition.
And that awareness can be trained.
And are you saying that the universe, or in your view, that your intuition will emerge and will always push you toward that path?
Yes, that's the belief. That's the thing that the very, very key of the sutra I'm following now is called Avatamsaka Sutra, the dynamics of yearning toward enlightenment. That dynamics, that strength, and that intuition is very strong in each of us. Friendship, nurture it. Meditation we help is to unfold faster. And the awareness, the mindfulness of who we are also help to open that up faster.
So that the seed, let's call it, or the germination of the intuition. Mm-hmm. How do you believe that's in every single living being?
That's it. So instead of believe that we had original sin, we believe that we had this original seed of goodness. The seed of goodness is always there. We just have to germinate, nurture, and let it grow. And therefore, there is a practice in our own lineage, in that the practice of visualizing the seed of the lotus and how that seed growing is symbolizing how our spirituality grow, but also symbolizing the very thing you just talked about, the moment. How do we get to the moment of open up? Because the lotus, the seeds, they're growing, and there's one time it will, boom, blooming, open up. So that is how we nurture the seed. But there's nothing about forcing it. We can only nurture it.
So you say to me many times, so we all know patience is a virtue. You say to me, impatience is not a virtue, because I'm always asking, how do we get there? When do we get there? What do we do next? Because that's just my nature. And so if I want to increase the velocity of my spiritual push, let's call it, what would be a good first step? How would I start?
The very first step is you need to sit down and quiet and be very calm and visualize that seed in you. And in the body, the deepest place is, we call the first chakra, the deepest place, the perineum, the very first place. I'm talking about very solid practice. You have to visualize it there and think that is the seed of your goodness, the seeds of Bodhi, it's enlightenment. Start from that seed, and okay, you're impatient, you want to go fast, okay, visualize it growing fast. But by doing that, slowly, you realize that doesn't matter how you want it fast. It has its own life. It takes time to grow and take time to bloom. In other words, it's okay to think that we need to push, we need to make it happen. It's okay to think that way. But the process we teach ourselves, the nature have its own pace. The growing into open up, into satori, meaning enlightenment, have its own lifespan, its own timing. But to summarize, what we see is that I don't think any approach is right or wrong, but I think every approach is good for a certain level, for a certain time. When we're not mature, push a little bit. When we become maturing, and not too much of pushing. When we are very mature, let us open ourselves. And therefore, we will get to the point where we can meet that very moment when we open up completely to the light and become the light ourselves in the Buddhist language. And therefore, I try to understand more about this is different cultures, different way to approach. But I don't see it's right and wrong that much. But I see maybe there's need here, need there. But the need for the wrong people who don't need it, it will have a backfire and maybe very fertile, very useless.
So I know in future episodes we plan on beginning the process of finding that stillness, germinating those seeds.
Seeds, yes.
And we can even talk about seed syllables and other things like that
Wow.
in the future. But we'll have to tune in to another installment of Enlightened Espresso. So thank you so much, Master.
Exciting.